As a video creator and now podcaster myself, there is nothing I want more than to see video podcasting become the next big thing. However, there are three really big problems when it comes to video podcasting, and I'm not sure that the video platforms and the podcasting platforms and all of the players in that circle are really all that interested in solving those problems. So let's talk about it. If you're new here, my name is Meredith, and I'm here to help you look good, sound good, and feel good on camera. And a couple of weeks ago, I launched a video podcast slash, it's also an audio podcast, but since I have an audience here on YouTube, it's also here on YouTube. And we're going to talk about the logistics of that and why I chose the setup that I did. I have a pretty significant mind map that I want to share with you because I did have to go down a deep rabbit hole of trying to figure out how this world of podcasting, which has been around longer than YouTube, how it works with video and YouTube and all of the other platforms that are out there, because it's not as simple as I hoped that it would be. So the three problems that I'm referring to are storage, distribution, and ad management. And if you're anything like me, you want your podcast to fall somewhere in the vicinity of this X here where these three circles meet. You want it to be easy, record, edit, upload to one place, and then have it be distributed as wide as it possibly can. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, all of the podcast player apps that are out there. You want it to go everywhere because you want it to reach as many people as it possibly can. Now, I am here for business. I create content for my business, and I create content that helps people create content for their businesses. And so the impact that I want to have, and that I think you probably want to have, is that the content you're creating has an impact on your business as well. Somewhere in that X is where we want to land. And the world of video podcasting right now makes it really hard to get into that X. When I first started considering the idea of a video podcast in conjunction with my channel, or maybe starting a whole new channel for the podcast, I really thought it would be as simple as creating a video file and uploading it to one place, and then magically having that go out to all of the platforms. Like Spotify plays videos, so I want the video to play on Spotify. Apple Podcasts plays videos. I want the video to play over there. Some of the pod catchers, the podcast apps, they don't play video, and that's okay. So just play the audio from the video, right? Like, it seems so simple, but it doesn't work that way. And yes, you could just upload a video to YouTube and let your audio be hosted with an audio host. But if there are apps like Apple Podcasts and Spotify that have the capability of playing video from a video podcast RSS feed, like, you want that to happen, right? And YouTube won't take the video and make that go over to those platforms. Like, the RSS doesn't work that way. They don't give us an RSS feed in that way, not that I've been able to figure out. And also, by the way, I just want to throw this out there. I'm recording this on April 23rd, 2024, and I am positive that a majority of what I'm saying in this video will at some point in the future be a little bit different. Maybe we will have some of these options. Please let me know in the comments if something has changed in the future, and if I do an updated video, I will post that in the pinned comments as well. I just got to throw that out there because, sometimes people come to a video 5 years later and they're like, "You're doing this wrong. You explained it wrong." And it's like, buddy, where were you 5 years ago? When I started doing the research on this, I was not expecting the level of hostility, I think, from some people in the podcast community towards video. There are people that say if there's no RSS feed, then it's not a podcast. And so if you just upload a video to YouTube, and even if you call it a YouTube podcast and designate it as a YouTube podcast, that's not considered a podcast because there's no RSS feed. There are some for lack of a better phrase, there are some grumpy old men vibe going on in the podcasting world from people who've been around for like 2 decades. And now all of a sudden everyone's making a big deal about video and they don't like it.
Why don't you do the world a favor and pull your lip over your head and swallow?
Sorry, I didn't invent YouTube. I'm just here to have fun with it and help people make it work for their business. I told you this was a whole can of worms. As I already mentioned, some podcast player apps will play videos. In a dream world, you would create a video podcast episode, you would upload it to one place, and it would go to all of the different platforms. And if that platform, that app, if it plays video, it'll play the video. If it doesn't play video, it'll play the audio. Unfortunately, that is not possible for a couple of reasons, but let me just acquaint you or reacquaint you with how this whole RSS thing works, because if you are familiar with how YouTube works, but you're not familiar with how podcast works, it gets kind of hairy. And if you already know what RSS is, then you can skip all this and feel free to fast forward to where I talk about how ad management is a real big problem with video podcasts. So if you know YouTube, you know you upload a video to YouTube and that video is on YouTube. You could embed that video into a website or a blog post or something, but the video is hosted on YouTube. It's consumed on YouTube. It's not going to other apps and platforms to like watch the video. Whereas with a podcast, you upload your audio file to a hosting company. Like I use Buzzsprout. There's Libsyn, there's Blueberry. There's a lot of podcast hosting companies out there. But you upload that file to one place, and through an RSS feed, which is like a data feed, it's a data feed, that RSS feed distributes to the different platforms. Apple Podcast, Spotify, they're watching for new content coming through your data feed. And so when it sees new content, boom, there it is. It's in all of the apps. So for example, I use Apple Podcasts. That's my go-to place to subscribe and listen to podcasts. Nothing is hosted on Apple Podcasts. They're hosted on a hosting company. The hosting company gives you an RSS and you create your Apple Podcast on Apple. And now Apple Podcast knows to look for new content in your RSS feed. But Spotify, on the other hand, is a distribution platform. It's a podcast player and a music player, but it's also a podcast host. So you could host your podcast on Spotify and get an RSS feed and have it distribute to all of the other podcast apps. Spotify will also let you upload a video, and you could have a video podcast on Spotify, but the RSS feed, your data feed, won't include the video. So yes, you can upload your video to Spotify, but that video is not going to port over to those other podcast player platforms like Apple Podcasts, for example, because Spotify's like, no. We are not a free video hosting company. We're not going to host the video here and then let people play it in all these other platforms where we don't benefit from the ad revenue or whatever. So if you host your video podcast on Spotify, the video only stays on Spotify. It does not go out. So you would need to find a hosting company that does have a video podcast feed, and they do exist. They are out there. So Spotify, of course, wants to keep people on Spotify. That makes sense. Just like YouTube wants to keep people on YouTube because that's where they can distribute ads to the viewers or to the listeners, because that's how they generate revenue. And so you can host a podcast somewhere else like Buzzsprout, Podbean, Blueberry, Libsyn, and you can bring your RSS into Spotify, but it will only be audio. This is so aggravating because if you want your video podcast to be on Spotify, you have to upload it directly to Spotify. There's no way around that. You have to upload it directly. But if you upload it directly, you still have to upload your video podcast somewhere else if you want that video feed to actually show up in the other players. See what I mean by this being a can of worms? So the week before I launched my podcast, I'm doing like all this testing and playing, and I'm a nerd, so it's fun for me. But I was really, really disappointed in Spotify's inability to like play nice with video. But I have to say, like, YouTube is doing the same thing. YouTube is not going to bring in a video file from a video RSS feed. You have to upload the video. And YouTube does have an RSS ingestion, is that the right word? Process where if you have an audio podcast on a like Buzzsprout, for example, you can throw your RSS feed into a podcast playlist on YouTube and it will bring in your audio podcast. It creates like a static image video. And there you go. You have your audio podcast on YouTube, but it won't bring the video over to YouTube. You have to upload that separately. So let me talk about video podcasting hosts a little bit because I was shocked. Okay, I already talked about grumpy old men. And so yes, you can upload and host your video podcast on YouTube or Spotify for free, but you don't get a video RSS feed to distribute that video feed to Apple Podcasts, for example. And I've talked to a couple people about this that are like, who cares? Like, why does that matter? If people are going to watch the video, like, wouldn't you rather have them go to YouTube? And the answer is yes. If you're going to watch me on video, I would rather you do that on my YouTube channel. But there are podcasts that I follow in Apple Podcasts who I know have a video version because I know that they record their podcast live. They live stream the recording on YouTube. And so I will see that there's a new podcast in Apple and then go, oh, I'm going to go watch the video and go open up YouTube. And so I can't be the only user who does that. So wouldn't it be nice to just have it there in the platform where I'm subscribed to them? So I mentioned that I am hosting my podcast with Buzzsprout, but I experimented with Podbean because I wanted to figure out the whole video RSS thing. And Buzzsprout, even though I listened to Buzzsprout's own podcast and I really like Buzzsprout's community, it's a very like welcoming community. And but they don't support video. They don't have video RSS feeds. So that's what sent me over to explore video RSS feeds and went down a whole other rabbit hole. So Libsyn is, I think, maybe like the oldest podcast hosting company out there. Don't quote me on it. But they do not offer a lot of like space, like storage for a video podcast. Like, we're talking about megabytes, not gigabytes. And for a video, for a podcast video, 20, 30, 40 minutes, an hour long, even longer, you need more than megabytes. Like, we're talking about a lot of space that you need to have. And I couldn't find like the appropriate amount of space with Libsyn. Blueberry has an unlimited plan for $100 a month on their Pro plan, $20 a month, and it's only 400 megabytes per month. So that is not great. $20 for 400 megabytes. It's not great when you have YouTube for free. You know what I mean? Zencastr, I almost wanted to check out Zencastr, and I'll tell you why I didn't in just a minute. Zencastr is like a recording platform, and I've used Zencastr many, many times, and I guess they now offer hosting, which I was really intrigued by because then you could record, you can edit, you can make social clips, and then host your video podcast and get a video podcast feed. And it looked like it was about $50 a month. And the reason why I did not go with Zencastr is because I went to YouTube and I looked for Zencastr hosting. I was looking for like a review or a person talking about here's how it works, here's how great it is, or here's how great it's not. And I couldn't find one single piece of content talking about their video hosting, which was weird. I was really surprised by that. So I decided to not be a guinea pig, even though this is all really just an experiment anyway. Podbean seems to be the best option for your money when it comes to video podcast hosting. And, that's fine, but there are some podcast players like Spotify and some of the other ones that the file has to be an MP3 file anyway. So I kind of got to this dead end where I was like, there's really no point in paying to host a video that can't be distributed to all of those platforms in the way that I really want them to be. And so it really was making my 3-prong approach to getting in the X there kind of way more complicated than it really needed to be. Even though you can host a video with Podbean and Blueberry and Libsyn, I think I contacted all 3 of them and asked, how does ad management work? And here's what I found out. First, let me give you a disclaimer. I don't plan to run ads on my podcast. I don't think I'm going to have that many downloads to even make anything from that. And I'm advertising my business, my courses, my programs. So that's not even like whatever. But these platforms have dynamic ads, meaning that I could create an ad for myself and have it dynamically inserted into past episodes, in the future. Let's say I have 52 episodes on a podcast, and a year from now, I want to let anyone who's listening to all of my back catalog know that I have like something coming up to invite you to, like, download this new freebie or something like that. Those things can be dynamically inserted if you have an audio feed, but they don't work if you have a video feed. And they just don't work. So not only are you paying a huge amount of money for video podcast hosting, but you're not even getting all of the benefits of paying a podcast host. And so that's when I decided to throw in the towel on being a guinea pig for a video podcasting RSS feed. And in order to reach the X over here and have an easy workflow where you only upload it once or, like as few times as possible and reach the widest amount of people and have the biggest impact on my business, I decided to have an audio host, that's Buzzsprout, and put the video on YouTube. So it's on my channel, my regular channel, my main channel. I considered starting a whole separate channel and I decided against it. I can do another video on that if you're curious, but it's just a video podcast on YouTube. It's a YouTube podcast on YouTube. So that stays on YouTube. It doesn't go anywhere and it's not bringing in an RSS from anywhere. It's just uploaded like a regular video. But the audio version gets uploaded to one place, Buzzsprout, and that audio version goes out to everything except for YouTube. So it's going to Spotify, Apple, and all of the others, but it's only audio. So is video podcasting the next big thing? What do you think? Because I have no idea. I think YouTube wants YouTube podcasts to be the next big thing, and Spotify wants Spotify to be the next big thing because they're doing a whole bunch of stuff over there. But I don't think the podcast hosting companies want video podcasting to be the next big thing, because hosting video files is going to get very expensive very quickly, and YouTube could disrupt this whole entire podcast ecosystem if they let people upload a video and host it as a podcast and give us that video RSS feed to be distributed. As a YouTube creator myself, I would love to see that happen.
This man is a menace. He's always drinking, starting fights. Isn't that right?
If you're one of the OG podcasters, don't come for me in the comments. I'm just saying, I think video is the most impactful way to reach an audience, and YouTube is the most powerful way to build your audience online. I said what I said. But I want to hear what you think. Is video podcasting the next big thing? Is it even a whole new thing? Or is it just the next evolution of video content and podcast content and just like long form content as a whole? Let me know in the comments. And if you're making video podcasts and you want to up your on-camera game, I'm going to link up my whole Crush It on Camera series here for you, because I'm showing you how to set up your camera, your microphone, your lights, what to buy. There's a whole guide you can download for free. But if you have a course or a program, or you're an author, a coach, a speaker, a personal brand of any kind, or you have an offline business that you want to bring online, then check out the Video Brand Infusion podcast, because that podcast is dedicated to helping you generate consistent sales and consistent revenue online as a YouTube video creator. So I'll link it below, and I'll see you there.